Kyle Scheidler, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Kyle, to begin, we're hearing reports of Hezbollah potentially joining this fight against Israel with backing from Iran, which has the ability to potentially create nuclear weapons. How should Israel be responding right now?
Well, Israel's problem is that they have been struck hard by Hamas. They have taken very serious civilian casualties of a kind that they have not faced in decades. They really need to reset the strategic calculus in the region. That means not just deterring Hamas. They have to deter Tehran. And Tehran has ultimate control over the moves of its proxies in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Yemen, and in Syria. So Israel has to look at that entire battlefield. They can't look just at Gaza.
And we're now seeing reports and countries like China saying that Israel's response has been more than just self-defense, saying they should lessen it. But what would happen if Israel were to back down?
Well, ultimately, it sends a very bad message to all of the players in the region. It shows Hamas that they can get away with, of course, literal murder and worse. And we will see a continued escalation. The problem with much of the discussion we are having now is they are blaming Israel for the potential of escalation. But the reality is the worst escalation will be if Israel does nothing. If Israel does not reset, as I said, the strategic calculus, it will mean that these actors can do as they please, and they will only worsen their attacks. So we've seen attacks from Hamas. This was the worst attack we've ever seen from Hamas. Next time will be even worse unless Israel sends a really clear message.
And for the scale of this, you wrote a piece recently comparing what we're seeing in the Middle East to J.R. Tolkien's story of evil sweeping Middle Earth. How does what we're seeing there impact us here in America?
Well, you mentioned, of course, China, and both China and Russia have taken essentially Hamas's side in this conflict, trying to restrain Israel and really emboldening their ally, Tehran. And that is a reflection of, as I called in the piece, the sort of growing evil that we're seeing across the world. And the point that I was trying to make was that for the United States, we must keep a global perspective. We must keep an eye on all of the various hot points that we may need to respond to. We have to let Israel deal with this situation on their border. They are more than capable of doing that if we get out of their way and if we do not try to restrain them. In the meantime, we need to keep our eye on all of the various threats around the globe, including on our own border, where you have drug cartels that have very close ties to Hezbollah. Our border is essentially wide open. They could move any manner of threats across that border, and there's very little right now that we're prepared to do about it. So we need to be thinking globally about all the possible threats and let Israel take care of its own.
And speaking of the U.S., U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Tel Aviv again in less than a week. He is reaffirming U.S. commitment to Israel. Now, Israel's defense minister is saying that this will be a long war. How long are we expecting?
Well, that, of course, will depend in part on how they choose to respond. It does sound like the messages coming out of Jerusalem are that the Israeli authorities recognize that they need to take very serious action, not just against Hamas, but against all of the threats on their border. If they choose to do that, it could potentially go for a while. We know that Israel has called up essentially all of their reserves, and they're getting a great response. Over 100% commitment from the Israeli reserves, so they are preparing for the long haul. I'm concerned that Blinken's presence in the region is really more about restraining Israel than it is helping them, however.
And what should the U.S. be doing, or what should the message be from the U.S.?
Essentially, the U.S. should be getting out of Israel's way. They should make clear that Israel must respond to this attack, and we expect them to do so. In other words, not try to restrain them, not try to rein them in, not try to prevent them from attacking Hezbollah if that's what they feel they need to do, for example. And right now, that's not the message coming out of Washington. Washington is saying one thing, but they're doing another. They are speaking as though they have Israel's back, But in their actions, what they are signaling to Tehran and elsewhere is that they do not want Israel to take major action to change the situation, which would be a win for Tehran and for its proxies, Hamas and Hezbollah.
Quite concerning. Well, Kyle Scheidler, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.